Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second installment here of our Genius Seminar Series. My name is Andy Jesperson. I'm a brand ambassador here at Evil Geniuses. Shout out to my other BAs. And I'm also a student at Georgia State University. Today, we're going to be taking a look at what it takes to build a competitive league team in the LCS.
Yeah, so what's up, guys? My name is Connor Doyle. Most of you guys probably know me as Artemis. I'm the division coach here at Evil Geniuses, which means that I cover LCS and Academy teams, working on coaching with a little bit of management as well.
Hi guys, name is Andrew Barton. I'm the general manager of our LCS team.
Hi guys, my name is Sabrina, aka Sab, previously a team operations manager over here at Evil Geniuses, currently the culture program specialist.
Hey everyone, my name is Nasser, or Empire. I'm the head of scouting and analysis at EG.
I just want to go ahead and start off with, this is our first year of having an LCS team. So starting with you, Andy, I just kind of want to go over, as the general manager, what was the thought process like as you were looking to build a league team?
Coming over to EG, it's a fresh new LCS program. You have teams in the league that have been here for multiple years and that have, their contracts in place already. And so, when we step foot, we come into already being at a disadvantage. There are teams with contracts in place, and it's not as easy as going, oh hey, I just want X, Y, and Z player, and they come right on over. Really doesn't work like that at all. And so, we have a pool of maybe 100 players within the ecosystem here in NA, and you can select from maybe 15 or so during the free agency period. And so really not a lot to work with when coming over here and selecting who you want. And so, you are very confined to selecting certain players. And so when I came over here, essentially, it was all about, who is available, who is out there that I can get and really build a base around. And so when it comes to constructing the roster, I'm looking for those long-term pieces and players I can build around who I want to invest resources into, not only on the player side, but even the staffing side. And so right here, I have Connor and Nasser, who I worked with previously at Clutch Gaming. I worked with Connor for 1 year. I worked with Nasser for 2 years. And so these are people, I respect and have, just the utmost respect for. And so, having them over here as well is something that, I was super happy with bringing them on over, just because, I already have synergy with them. I've worked with them. I know what to expect out of them. And, I think they're fantastic people to work with. So, when building a program from scratch, it's, acquiring the correct staff members. We have Irene as well, who we're happy to have as our head coach, who's been doing a fantastic job this year. And so, from a staffing perspective, I feel really strong about the program we've created. And then on the player side, we acquired Svenskeren, Zazel, Definitely, and Kumo, who are all a fantastic base to work with. And then, it's all about filling in the pieces around them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Connor, at what point were you brought on during this process? Was the player acquisition something that you specifically were intermingled with? What was that like for you?
So last year was actually my contract year, where I had previously been working for Clutch Gaming, which then sort of was transitioning to Dignitas as we made our run to Worlds. And as Andy was, brought over to EG and was working with them in the building phase, like I was sort of still stuck in my contract jail, where I was waiting for my contract to expire before I left. So I got in near the tail end of the roster building process. I did have some influence and some control over the last couple pieces, but by the time I got here, Andy had already really solidified what was going to be our core, which is what he mentioned with the Dennis and Tristan, or Svenskeren and Zazel. So with that, my job was very easy. We just had to go through, do some analysis on some of our not role players, but just some of the last few pieces we had left. I think this was when we were still looking to import mid. We definitely were going after some high profile pieces, but yeah, I was one of the people who was evaluating Jizuke, interested most in, how he would be stacking up against NA mid laners mechanically when it comes to his lane phase and his ability to play side lane. He was a piece where his perceived value was much, much lower than his true value. And what I mean by that is he had come off an off year. He had gotten dropped from his team. Nobody was really high on Jizuke. They sort of didn't really view him as a strong piece necessarily. So whenever you have a player whose perceived value is lower than their actual value, that's like a steal from like a management perspective. That's the kind of player that you want to invest in, or that's the kind of player that you want to grab for your roster. So with that context, I was pretty excited about Jizuke. I liked what I saw in his film, and I'm excited to work with him and excited to work with such a talented roster that we have here at EG.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about sort of a player's stock in relation to their previous performance versus their absolute peak. So I think that's a great point. When we were looking to build our organization, some organizations like to play it a bit more safe, but it seems like Evil Geniuses was willing to take risks. What kind of risks specifically were you willing to take, Andy, when you were looking to build either our roster or our approach into the first few years?
Yeah, I think for us as an organization and a staff, we're fairly aligned on this. Our goal is to see NA talent and move up rookies into the LCS. I think that's how even from a roster construction perspective, it and the budget, how that works is when you can bring up a rookie who's likely on a rookie contract, it allows you to spend capital elsewhere and bring in more high profile talent to pair with them. And so the big risk we took this year was essentially, it's bringing in Jizuke, who's not necessarily a rookie, but he is new to the NA ecosystem, but mainly Kumo. We obviously got to see Kumo last year in the LCS multiple times, and so we had some data there to work with him. But what's important is, we also had eyewitnesses who worked with Kumo, not necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but they participated with him in scrims every once in a while, and worked with him throughout the day. And so, reviews from Svenskeren and Zazel all spoke extremely highly of a player like Kumo, and we wanted to give him his shot. And going off that as well, Kumo has been fantastic, and he's a player we definitely hold very highly here. He's continuing to work every day and get better as a rookie talent. And so for us, when it comes to risk, we like to look at the academy program and how to potentially bring up those players, and we can call that a perceived risk.
Absolutely. And I think we'll talk a ton about Academy since I'm sure a lot of people have questions in reference to that. Sabrina, as the manager, how did you go about meshing with a team with so many different cultures in it, and especially just a fresh team in general from staff and players?
Yeah, at first it was a little bit challenging, to be completely honest. You have people from all over the world combined together to, in this like boiling pot of like work, practice, living together, etc. It's a lot of work. They spend all their time together, but the best news was that these players were coming in ready to go, and put everything aside to be good at the game as a team. And that is really hard to find, set aside ego and personalities, to like really hone in on one goal is difficult. But both management and players, both parties were really willing to do that. So thankfully it was not too hard afterwards. They all meshed along very well. It was really easy, and I was there to provide the resources that they needed to succeed.
Yeah. Nasser, I'm curious about your role throughout this. I know that you're someone who's worked in several different regions. And as an analyst, I'm just curious, how do you go about scouting talent and assessing talent from all these different regions?
Basically, when I'm not in scrims and I'm not doing work related to LCS, I'm constantly watching footage from solo queue, from other leagues around the world, LEC, European regional leagues, any amateur tournaments, and like I said, solo queue as well. And I just keep watching the players that seem the most interesting, keeping tabs on things they are good at, things they're weak at, noting down, champion pools, champion matchups they've had success and problems with. Just as much as I can, just try to create a database of different players that we might be interested in, and keeping tabs on them year round. And then when it comes to off season, we can trim down that list and see who's most interesting, who would most mesh with the infrastructure that we have here, and also be able to fulfill the goals that we have at EG, either now if it's for the main team, or in the future if it's for the academy team.
Yeah, and that's really interesting that you mentioned looking at solo queue. I think it's something that most of the community is curious about, is how in-depth teams can be with reviewing solo queue. Is that something that you look at consistently, to look at different players in different regions and how they might play certain champs?
Yeah, in terms of like trying to learn if a champion is becoming popular or is at the brink of becoming viable competitively, finding who the one tricks are at high elo, or finding players that are particularly well adept at playing those champions. trying to find them on social media, or trying to add them on the client and finding out more information about how these champions work. Any skill combos, any tips and tricks. I try to find any edges. Even going through a champion subreddit, sometimes you'll find information that's not commonly available elsewhere as well. So any edge to try to help the LCS team, I'll definitely use either through solo queue or through social media. Info gathering is just really, really important in League of Legends, and pushing to find these edges competitively is super underrated.
From a wider lens, Connor, how do we look at different regions and maybe borrow different methods, different play styles, things of that nature? How do we approach looking at talent across different regions from a team perspective?
Yeah, so I think one of the most interesting things in League of Legends is that we typically have distinct metas by region that don't really mix until we get to international competition. So, for example, China, Korea, NA, EU, they're all going to have different priorities in draft. They're all going to have different pick orders in draft, and they'll even have just totally different like champion ranges when it comes to like what champions are actually going to play on stage. And there is a certain level of intermixing during the season where we have our contacts primarily in EU and Korea, not so much in China. Although we do have some contacts in China, but we do talk to teams, players, coaches, analysts from other regions, and kind of exchange information and kind of promote the free flow of ideas so that we can bring some things in from other regions when it comes to like draft specifically. But when it comes to gameplay, I think that you do, as a coach, you do try and kind of narrow in on the region that you think is playing the best League of Legends. Historically, that would be Korea, back when I think I was first, really coming up quickly in the game myself. Now it's going to be more like the LPL or the LEC. Both those regions are looking very strong, at least at the top. And you do look at the strategies that they're using, you look at the gameplay, and you do try and bring that flavor to your own team through your review or through how you analyze the game and just kind of the lens you view it. But it's not really until we get to international competition that we really see these metas mix.
Going back to the academy point that we alluded to a little bit earlier, Andy, I'm kind of curious, what do you think EG does differently from other orgs, or just how do we approach preparing academy players as talent for the LCS?
Yeah. So for our academy program, and the way I think of the program, I try to think tactically about why every piece is there and what is their purpose. So, I can think through our entire academy roster, and I know why that specific person is there. And so, for everyone, it is quite different. Everyone in particular knows their role and what they're striving to do. I think for our players specifically, I know most of them are 100% ready for the LCS, and if they were called up, they would absolutely be ready to go. And so what we do differently, I think it's an interesting question, but I know our academy and LCS team are scrimming pretty actively. We have eyes on who we can move up potentially and what we want to do there. So what we do differently, there's not too much specifically we can go into, but there's a reason why every player is there. They understand their purpose, and going forward, I am very happy with what we're doing in academy.
So we've talked a good bit about the way that the team has worked in a technical aspect, but I want to talk a little bit more about the culture. So Sabrina, I want to throw it to you first. So in regards to adding more players to a roster, I know that you've worked with several different teams. How does the dynamic change when you have different players, maybe someone starting, and there's sort of that balance between one player is supposed to replace another, but also there's that mentor-mentee relationship. How do you work on that as a manager?
Yeah, I'll kind of tackle the first part of the question. How does adding a player or changing a player kind of change the team dynamic? And the answer is it changes it a lot. With a 5-man roster, usually all your players are usually played throughout the split, and therefore there is a defined team culture that grows within that team. When you kind of switch 1/5 of that out for someone else, they bring a completely different set of personality, communication, etc., that you have to work around. And within League of Legends, usually that falls upon the management and the players to really figure out as soon as you can. As many people know, we play two best of ones on the weekends, and you have 3 to 5 days of scrims depending on the week. So being able to manage that very quickly is difficult, but it really does rest on having players that are mature enough to kind of work through those problems. Having a defining history really helps as well here at EG. And going through and sifting through all of that is a lot of social dynamics. So with that, in terms of EG, it's very interesting because I think we have a group of very professional players who are willing to kind of spend the time on the mentee-mentor relationship. With our current switch up, with Golden Glue and Jizuke, a lot of people would expect, hey, Jizuke is probably upset. What is his role now because he's not playing in academy? And I think I've seen Jizuke really step up as a positional coach as well as someone who's really putting 110%, even though he's not playing with keyboard and mouse on the team. He's giving feedback. He's supporting the team, drafts, plays, etc. And it's been really exciting to see as someone who's like really invested in the team since.
Yeah, and that's great to hear that they have such a healthy relationship too. Andy, is there anything that you'd like to add from the general manager perspective about how things like that work? I know that's a large part of your job as well.
Yeah, for me, in my position, I really strive to make a culture to where everyone is happy and we can get the most out of our players. I think culture is actually so critical to this because you can go buy the best players throughout the world, have them in a room, and just have the best team on paper. However, when you get down to the 24/7 job we do during the season, finding a group and bringing them together, not only as friends, but as peers and as players on the Rift, all of that is so critical to the roster construction process. And that's why it can be so difficult to bring together an organization this first year. It truly is a multi-year process of building out that culture and finding the players, coaching staff, management, everyone who can come together and work throughout this throughout a season. Because like I said, this is a 24/7 job when you're in season. My players know they can contact me at 4 a.m. and I'm waking up no matter what.
Yeah, and bouncing off that, I think that building culture is oftentimes about making short-term sacrifices in order to build something special. And you have to figure out what your values are first and foremost. And at Evil Geniuses, I think primarily our first value is excellence, right? Whether it means on the Rift, whether it means in our personal lives, in our professional lives, whatever we do, like we have to be the best. It's just absolutely integral to who we are as people. And you sort of figure out like what your top values are, and then you work down from there. And once you get like it sounds really cheesy, but once you get your core values and once you start to understand what's important to you as an organization, that's what guides every single one of your decisions, whether it's a roster decision, whether it's a staffing decision, every single thing that you do has to be value oriented. And if you can make these necessary short-term sacrifices where you can make hard choices and actually follow through with what you say, that's where you start to build something special. And I think that we've gotten definitely fortunate in the short term where we're having success, but this was always a long-term play. We didn't expect to come into the LCS and really dominate the way that we have or sort of have shown that we can do. So yeah, I'm really proud of all the work that everyone here has done, and I'm really excited to show you guys what we have in store.
Thank you guys so much for your insight as far as we've come here. Now we're going to take some time to answer some questions from Twitch chat themselves. So the first question here is for Andy from Minogi. As someone who's trying to transition from traditional to esports, what is the biggest piece of advice you can give to gaining connections? Reaching out over LinkedIn or Discord, or try to put apps out in an email, or something completely different?
I definitely think putting applications out is the right way to go about it. I think LinkedIn can work, but perhaps I would gravitate more towards Discord as long as it's not too annoying and the person is open to it. Twitter is a good way as well. But getting your applications out there is pretty critical. We go through, every resume we see, what value can this person potentially bring to our organization? How best can we utilize him? It does require a little bit of luck, that's for sure. This is something, we've all wanted to do for the entirety of our lives potentially. And so, it is a lot of luck, but, I would recommend always applying and putting yourself forward because, what do you have to lose by applying? You do not have too much to lose.
Yeah, go ahead, Seb.
This is a chaotic neutral episode with just me and Connor really excited to talk about this kind of stuff. But yeah, just real quick, I also want to add, I come from a little bit more of a non-traditional for traditional sports, but traditional for esports way into the organization and to my career. I would say definitely making a name for yourself throw small tournaments, manage a small team, get involved with the collegiate esports scene, get that experience and ramp up slowly. You'll build natural connections that way and genuine relationships, and that'll help you in the future.
Yeah, and finally, I think that like if you're coming from a traditional sports background and you like have like very high level professional expertise in that, like if you've been working at the professional level, if you've been working at something even close to that, like I think that your perspective is incredibly valuable, and I would lean into that expertise. I think that I come from a professional or a traditional sports background. I wasn't a professional by any means, but I had collegiate experience, which I think is quite good when it comes to traditional sports. And I definitely leverage those skills on a day-to-day basis when I'm doing my job. So it's certainly something that we think is valuable. I think other teams are going to think it's valuable as well. As far as how you reach out to people, I think be persuasive and be brief. I think brevity is really important. Like if I get a cold call DM on Twitter and it's like 6 paragraphs, like I'm probably not going to read that. But like if you hit me with a good hook, like you really boom, 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 lay out what you think your strengths are, and then show me proof of that. I think that's what it takes. Like you have to be able to sell yourself. So being persuasive and having like persuasive skills, I think is a large part of what it takes to actually get the foot in the door. And then of course you actually have to know what you're doing to really smash the door open.
Of course, yeah. All right, for our next question, this one is directed to Nasser from Loud Thoughts. When it comes to the amateur scene, what lengths is EG willing to take to scout new talent and promote players in that have competitive experience?
As far as what lengths EG's taking, personally, I'm watching the amateur tournaments every night they're on, watching all of them, watching the VODs and jotting down notes, data points, and then compiling, summaries and such, and keeping tabs on players that I'm interested in. And then in terms of willing to promote the growth in the players in that space, basically getting them into academy, or finding another way to have them be a part of our organization is something maybe we're looking into doing. So yeah, and yeah, I'm definitely all for promoting the talent in that space, because I think, like I said earlier, I think NA is going through a renaissance period, and you're definitely going to see a lot more investment into the amateur scene from LCS teams and from the LCS.
This next question is for Andy. What tips would you give to an amateur team manager or the manager of a collegiate team?
It's an interesting question. From a management perspective, I have to think back probably to, what I kind of did as a team manager. And, really what it comes down to is making sure your players are ready to go and are ready for competition any day of the week. It's always checking on them. How can I help you? What can I do to make your life easier and to get you to stage ready? I think that is super critical. And while being online is a little different, actually, I've not had an opportunity to work with players online just like that. And so I'm not sure my advice would be the most optimal, but I can speak to myself and how I work with my players, and it is doing whatever is necessary for these guys to make sure they are ready for stage. Doesn't matter what it is. I want them to know that they are taken care of, and I'm here to help them in any way possible. So my best advice for a manager is that's how you need to act, and that's what you need to do for your players. It's putting them in a position to succeed.
Sabrina, do you have anything that you would like to add from that? I know you have a ton of collegiate experience.
Number one, collegiate team management and professional team management are night and day. The needs are completely different. I'll bet they both take a lot of time. When you are in a collegiate team management position or an amateur team, it's actually pretty similar to how COVID is. If you're not on site, how it's kind of affected the management system. It's a lot of remote support, which means, checking in on your players, but also being able to have all the skills necessary without the resources. Like, the scheduling, the interpersonal skills, those all come into play, but you're all remote. When it comes to professional, it's a lot about being in person and being alive and being able to communicate with your team and provide them the support that they need and the resources they need, without a screen. Just being a good person and making sure that you gain their trust by doing the right things. I know that we've kind of had a discussion about management within Evil Geniuses, and it's all about being one step ahead of the player. It's something that I've really learned at EG specifically compared to other teams. Knowing what they want to do, what they need to get that W, you want to have that ready for them even before they ask. And that is something that I've learned.
Our next question is also for you, Connor. It's talking about Vaudeview. They say, what does Vaudeview look like compared to other organizations or even between LCS and Academy?
Interesting. So I'm not really privy to Vaudeviews from other organizations. I think that one of the difficulties of being a coach in LCS, like especially when it comes to answering questions about the efficacy of another coach or how strong another organization's staff is, we really don't see anything. I see their drafts in scrims, I see their stage play on the weekends, but that's maybe 5-10% of the job. Like 90% of the job is going to be behind the scenes, like behind the curtains that I won't really ever get access to. So as far as what we do differently here, I think that I guess I can compare it to my old team, Clutch Gaming. I think like it really depends on the relationship of your coaches and your relationship of your staff. I think that the mix you have as your staff is going to determine like how review plays out. Some teams are going to be very single coach driven, where you do have that split, like in the previous question, where I have like one strategic coach who's going to like go through the VOD review and he's going to like give just like timestamps and I kind of just be like boring about it and just like lecture to you, which I don't really necessarily think is an effective way to coach. It's certainly not an effective way to teach. And I think we see that in many different sports and avenues around the world. There's also more of like a player-driven VOD review where really it's more like experiential, where you're trying to promote discussion, enable your players to have conflict, and really facilitate that conflict and get to compromises where the team can sort of take these opposing thoughts and reach some sort of conclusion that moves the team forward in the direction that the coaches want to take. And ultimately, it depends on your staff. Like I said, I think it's going to depend on the strengths of your staff. Like a lot of teams are probably lacking in one area or another, and they sort of have to tailor that review based on the staff that they have. I think that the best mix is going to be more of this discussion-based experiential learning, where you do enable your players and you do empower your players in that discussion. Because at the end of the day, learning a game like League of Legends is incredibly challenging. And you really have to sort of get a lot of these clicks and aha moments on a day-to-day basis that can move the team forward. And you're not really going to find those if you're just lecturing at them.
Our last question is for Sabrina. How did you get into an LCS position from collegiate?
Yeah, honestly, it's been a pretty crazy journey for me specifically. Everyone here has a different story, but for me personally, I actually went to the LCS almost every weekend, and I was just asking people, "Hey, I am a college student. Can I get an internship position? I would love to get involved." And the first team that I got involved with full time was Immortals, and I just fulfilled any position that they needed me. I just wanted the experience. I knew that I wanted to work in esports. Ever since I went to my first esports event in 2013, I got that opportunity. I did my best, and from there, I just continued to grow my connections in my career. It's very important to have goals. It's very important to make friends within the space and be a real person and really hone in the skills over time. So I got that opportunity. I've done a couple career leaps here and there, and I ended up at Evil Geniuses. So,
and we're happy to have you as well. As we head towards the end here and start wrapping up, Connor, is there anything that you want to say to the EG fans just about the future of the team and whatnot?
Yeah, so it looks like we got like 125 of you people, cool geniuses watching in the chat. Thanks so much for coming out tonight, guys. I think I can speak for everyone. We had a blast answering your questions and talking about the scene, talking about our experiences. I don't think that we get to do this enough. I don't think that we get to like give back to the community in this way nearly enough. So yeah, hopefully that you guys at least learned something, or at least like sparked your interest, maybe like grew your passion a little bit, maybe made you more excited about the industry or about your careers or the future. Hopefully we could bring that for you. And I think the big thing from us is just thank you for your support. I know that speaking for everybody here, this is definitely a draining job. It's a taxing job, but one of the biggest ways that we kind of get recharge is from you guys. It's from the fans. So being able to provide you guys entertainment on the weekends, giving you guys wins in LCS, nothing makes me happier than winning for you guys. So I think for all of us are in that same boat. So thanks again so much for your support. We really appreciate it. And thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, and as draining as it may be, we all appreciate all the work that you guys have done to make our LCS team so great. So on behalf of myself and all the fans, thank you. But yeah, that's going to do it here for us. Thank you guys so much again. And remember to #LiveEvil.
Thanks, guys. Later.
Thanks, everyone.